Beneath the golden sunlight of a Viennese summer, Schönbrunn Palace rises like an eternal symbol of Habsburg power, its gleaming yellow roofs and vast gardens stretching out like a perfect Baroque painting, where architectural beauty conceals the dark secrets of a dynasty that spanned nearly 4 centuries. Built from the 17th century and completed under Empress Maria Theresa in the mid-18th century, this palace was not merely a summer residence for the Habsburg emperors, but a silent witness to the rise and fall of a family that dominated Europe from Austria to Spain, from Italy to the Netherlands. Schönbrunn, meaning beautiful spring, derives its name from an artesian well from which the emperor once drank, and it became the heart of the court under Maria Theresa, who transformed it into an icon of Rococo splendor, with opulent rooms and French-style gardens reflecting the endless ambition for power and the eternal legacy of the house. Yet behind that beauty lies a tragic tale of bloodlines, of marriages arranged not for love, but for political gain, leading to a genetic curse that spanned generations, forcing the royal children to pay the price with their own bodies and destinies. The Habsburg Dynasty began in the 13th century in Switzerland, but its true power exploded in the 15th century when Maximilian I married Mary of Burgundy, bringing the wealthy lands of Burgundy and the Netherlands into the family, inaugurating the famous marriage strategy. Let others wage war. Happy Austria marries. These unions expanded the empire to the point where the sun never set upon it, with Charles V ruling both the Holy Roman Empire and Spain in the 16th century. However, the policy of keeping blood unified within the family gradually led to consanguineous marriages, from cousins to uncles and nieces, in order to protect wealth and power from outsiders. At first, these marriages brought immense benefits, such as Philip III's union with Joanna of Castile in 1496, which placed Spain in Habsburg hands and created the powerful Spanish branch. Over generations, however, the inbreeding coefficient rose steadily, from 0.025 in Philip I to much higher levels in later descendants, causing recessive harmful genes to manifest, particularly the deformity known as mandibular prognathism, the infamous Habsburg Jaw, along with maxillary deficiency, resulting in a thick lower lip and an abnormally long nose. These defects were not merely aesthetic. They affected the ability to eat, speak, and more importantly, overall health, reducing child survival rates and fertility. At Schönbrunn, where Maria Theresa raised her 16 children and hosted lavish banquets, the palace became a symbol of the Habsburg Austrian pinnacle, yet it was also where royal children grew up under the genetic shadow of the Spanish branch. Maria Theresa, though married to Francis Stephen of Lorraine, a relatively distant union, still carried blood from prior consanguineous marriages, and her children were somewhat affected, although the Austrian branch fared better than the Spanish thanks to occasional outbreeding. Schönbrunn, with its gloriette atop the hill overlooking the entire garden, symbolized the Habsburg victory over the Ottoman Empire in 1683, but it also served as a reminder of the fragility of power when built upon an artificially pure bloodline. While the palace dazzled with frescoes and the Hall of Mirrors, where a 6-year-old Mozart once performed for the court, far away in Madrid, the Spanish branch was gradually weakening due to its closed marriage policy, producing children with increasingly frail bodies and severe deformities. This genetic curse was no accident, but the result of a series of political decisions where power was prioritized over the health of future generations, and Schönbrunn, though a place of joy for royal children, stood as a witness to the price of royal arrogance. As one walks through the long corridors of Schönbrunn, where light filters through windows onto polished wooden floors and solemn royal portraits hang in solemn array, it is impossible not to sense the stark contrast between outward splendor and the silent inner suffering of the Habsburg line. The palace, commissioned initially by Leopold I at the end of the 17th century, was designed to rival Versailles. Yet Leopold himself was a victim of inbreeding, with a protruding lower jaw that made eating and speaking difficult, a trait inherited from predecessors like Maximilian I and Charles V Leopold I, who married his own niece, Maria Theresa of Spain, further increased the inbreeding coefficient, and his children suffered accordingly, though he lived long and ruled effectively through wars against the Ottomans. Schönbrunn, with its vast gardens and Neptune fountain symbolizing oceanic dominion, reflected the unending Habsburg ambition, yet it concealed the truth that the royal blood was gradually being poisoned by the very marriages intended to preserve it. In the 17th century, the Spanish branch bore the heaviest consequences, with Philip IV marrying his niece Mariana of Austria, resulting in the birth of Charles II in 1661, the last king of that line, whose inbreeding coefficient reached 0.254, higher than that of a child of siblings. Charles II was born with a severely protruding lower jaw that prevented him from chewing normally, a thick tongue that made speech difficult, along with countless other ailments such as pituitary insufficiency and kidney problems, rendering him frail from childhood, prone to epilepsy, and infertile despite 2 marriages. The life of Charles II was the tragedy of a dynasty where he was called El Hechizado, the Bewitched, because the people believed his deformities were the work of demons, when in reality they stemmed from 16 generations of inbreeding, with Joanna the Mad appearing 14 times in his pedigree. At Schönbrunn, though geographically distant, the death of Charles II in 1700 sent shockwaves, triggering the War of the Spanish Succession, in which Austria under Joseph III, brother of Charles VI, attempted to reclaim part of the inheritance, only for the Bourbons to ultimately take the Spanish throne. Schönbrunn then became a refugee for children orphaned of power, where Maria Theresa grew up with a profound sense of dynastic duty. The Habsburg Jaw was not merely a personal issue, but a manifestation of inbreeding depression, where infant mortality in the Habsburg family was far higher than among commoners, only about 50% of children surviving to age 10, compared to 80% in Spanish villages. Modern genetic studies confirm that mandibular prognathism and maxillary deficiency have a recessive genetic basis, manifesting only when both parents carry the harmful genes from common ancestors, and the higher the inbreeding, the more severe the deformity, as seen most extremely in Charles II. While the Austrian branch under Maria Theresa avoided a similarly tragic end thanks to the Lorraine marriage, creating the Habsburg-Lorraine line, Schönbrunn still houses portraits of Spanish kings with protruding jaws, reminders of the cost of power. The palace, with its hall of mirrors where Napoleon once stood, witnessed the transfer of power but also concealed genetic pain behind layers of golden splendor, where royal children played in the gardens yet carried the shadow of their ancestors. Schönbrunn in autumn, when golden leaves fall along the paths leading to the Gloriette, evokes the gentle decline of a dynasty that once dominated Europe, where Maria Theresa, the most powerful Habsburg empress, used the palace as a center for reforms, raising her children and confronting challenges from the War of the Austrian Succession following her father Charles VI's death in 1740. Charles VI, lacking a male heir, had issued the pragmatic sanction to allow his daughter Maria Theresa to succeed, but the death of Charles II of Spain still haunted the family, reminding them that the absence of a male heir could lead to war and territorial loss. Maria Theresa, though possessing a slightly protruding jaw, a trace of Habsburg blood, was robust and fertile, thanks in part to her marriage to Francis Stephen, which introduced some genetic diversity, allowing the Austrian branch to survive while the Spanish line perished. At Schönbrunn, she held cabinet meetings and banquets, transforming the palace into a symbol of renewed vitality. Yet deep down, she understood the risks of inbreeding from the story of Charles II. The consequences of consanguinity extended beyond physical deformities to reduced fertility and lifespan, with studies showing that cousin-level inbreeding decreased survival chances by 18%, and in Charles II, 2 combined recessive disorders rendered him completely infertile. Schönbrunn, home to the world's oldest zoo, founded in 1752, symbolized the Habsburg interest in nature and the education of their children. Yet it was also where Maria Theresa's offspring grew up aware of their bloodline, where Marie Antoinette, her daughter, would later be guillotined in France, partly due to hatred toward the Habsburgs. The dynasty continued through Joseph II and Leopold II, but deformities lingered, as seen later in Ferdinand I of Austria with epilepsy and hydrocephalus. The palace witnessed the empire's gradual weakening, from the loss of Spain to the Napoleonic Wars, during which Schönbrunn served as Napoleon's headquarters in 1809. The hidden cost of the Habsburgs was the trade-off between short-term power and long-term survival, where consanguineous marriages brought territories but took away the health of future generations, leading to the extinction of the Spanish branch and the weakening of the Austrian one. Schönbrunn, with its galleries of portraits from Charles V to Franz Joseph, tells the story of a family that conquered Europe through marriage but was ultimately defeated by its own blood, where Baroque beauty concealed profound human suffering. As twilight falls over Schönbrunn, the last rays of sunlight illuminate the golden facade of the palace, evoking the end of a glorious yet tragic era, where Franz Joseph, the last emperor born and who died here in 1916, witnessed the collapse of the empire after World War I. Schönbrunn, from Maria Theresa's summer retreat to a symbol of endurance, now a UNESCO heritage site, reminds us that Habsburg power paid the price of a 400-year genetic curse, from mild deformities in Maximilian I to the absolute tragedy of Charles II. The dynasty ended not through war alone, but through the exhaustion of its bloodline, where inbreeding accumulated harmful genes, reduced genetic diversity, and led to infertility and high child mortality. Today, as visitors stroll through the gardens of Schönbrunn, they behold timeless beauty. But few know of the royal children who once suffered deformities, of Charles II, who could not eat normally, or of other kings whose protruding jaws became symbols of arrogance. This curse teaches us about the fragility of power built on artificial purity, and Schönbrunn stands as a humane witness, inviting reflection on the true cost of an imperial dynasty.